Yesterday, Premier Ford met with mayors in various cottage countries across all of Ontario. Locally, Warden Jones, Mayor Mitchell, and Mayor Amiot were part of that call. And we talked about how the province should proceed as we open up the economy from COVID-19. And specifically, what we should be doing with secondary residences for people. Premier is been pretty adamant that we want to keep the concept of if you don't need to travel, please don't travel. Stay at home unless you need to go someplace. But he also recognizes that it's not possible for him to pass legislation that says you cannot travel someplace in Ontario. Travel restrictions like that fall in the federal jurisdiction, not in the provincial jurisdiction. We know that people who are going up to secondary residences, people who are vacationing in areas like ours, contribute a great deal to the domestic product for our area. But we also have to recognize that we're still fighting a pandemic virus. And the health and safety of people in Ontario should always be at the forefront. The most important thing that we do as we open up the province is making sure that we don't have a secondary wave of this disease. I have spoken to a number of people about it, and I want to put it in perspective. It takes 2 weeks for the virus to incubate and become evident for most people. The changes that we make today, we're not going to see the effects of it for 2 weeks. If we open things up too soon, if we do things in the wrong speed, then we'll be in a position again where we have to enter a form of a lockdown. 1 day too soon means 2 weeks of a lockdown. So we have to get this right. We have to do it in a staged manner, and we have to make sure that the people recognize that although you are able to go out, although the weather is nice, you still have to have your social distancing. You still have to maintain all of those protective measures that you've been taking. Don't let all of the good work that you've done go to waste by doing too much too soon. Along those same lines, we are opening up more businesses in Ontario. And I'm going to start with garden centers and nurseries. They will be allowed to open for customers to come in as of Friday night. We started off with curbside delivery with it. We had a number of people who were coming to it. That has been done safely. The nurseries and the garden centers have been able to put in place measures to protect the public as they come in and shop. Now they're ready to open. On Saturday, that'll extend to hardware stores and safety supply stores. Again, they have been doing curbside pickup up until now, and it's given them the opportunity to put measures in place to protect people from the spread of the disease as they move into the store itself. I know for a lot of those businesses that's welcome news, but again, it comes back to they've done the right things to make sure that people are protected and that we're not going to be spreading the disease. On Monday, we'll open it up for curbside delivery for all other retail businesses who have a storefront. Again, it's staged that way to make sure that everything can be put in place to protect both the employees and the customers and not spread the disease. And the last thing I want to talk about today is hydro rates. We have extended the time of use rates at the lowest level until the end of May. We know that there are still a large number of people who are working from home. There are a large number of people who are still out of work because of what's happened with COVID-19. And it's not fair to punish them by having their electrical rates be the peak rates in the time where they're at home and they don't have any choice but be at home. So we're extending it again until May 31st. Then we'll enter a COVID recovery phase from there. Hopefully, we're in a position that we are moving out of COVID-19, moving out of the pandemic phase of it, and we're back into a recovery phase on things. I can't thank the people of Ontario, especially the people of this area, enough. If you look at the number of infections that we've had and the number of deaths in our area specifically to COVID-19, we have done a fabulous job. One person officially has passed away in our area because of COVID-19, and we've had 2 other individuals who have died who were COVID-19 positive, but COVID-19 was not the cause of death. When you look at the rest of the province, we have done extremely well here. And it's because people have been following the guidelines. Let's keep that up. The sooner that we beat this virus, the sooner we can open Ontario back up. And the more people stay with the social distancing, the more washing of your hands, protecting others, and not putting yourself in a position where you have an opportunity to contract the disease or spread the disease, the more we do that, the sooner we'll be able to open Ontario back up. That's the end of my prepared speech. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions whatsoever. It can be about what I've just spoken about. It can also be about any other issues that are going on in the province. We'll start with Noor because you called in and you can't raise your hand.
Thanks, Dave. My question was very general. I know some of the post-secondary institutions are putting measures in place to make sure that they may or may not have online classes in the fall. Does the province have any, view on that?
So we've been working with the colleges and the universities to provide them with tools for virtual learning. There was I'm afraid the name of the company has escaped me, but a tool that we provided for them for online exams. With respect to what each of the universities or colleges are going to do come September, I've had a number of conversations with Trent University. I've had a conversation with Sir Sanford Fleming, and they're still in the planning phases of what they're going to do. Both of them have numerous contingency plans based on what the infection rate is and what will happen with respect to the number of people that can congregate in a different area. Trent, I think, has done some exceptional work on it, and they believe that they'll be able to offer basically all of their courses through a combination of in-class and online. With Fleming, they have a little bit more difficulty because some of their courses are more practicum based. It's based around experiential learning, and it's a little bit more difficult for those experiential learning components to be done online. They have a little bit more of a challenge than Trent does, but I'm pretty confident that as close to a regular school year as we can have, we'll begin in the fall for post-secondary students.
Perfect, thanks, Dave.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Dave, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it's Matthew. I had my hand up. Nobody was saying anything. So, what were some of the concerns that Warden Jones and the mayor's voiced to the premier the other day when they were speaking?
It was actually Mayor Mitchell who was able to get a question in, but Mayor Jones and Mayor Amiot had shared their thoughts with me ahead of time as well. Essentially, the concern that we have in this area, and it's common with all of our townships, they want people to feel welcome to come back, but they don't want people to come back too soon and have the possibility of another outbreak. One of the concerns that was brought forward was they're willing to accept an extra weekend of people not coming if it means it's going to be safer than to have people come back too soon and then have a shutdown for the entire summer. And when you look at, say, North Kawartha or Trent Lakes, those two in particular have very high seasonal residents. There are a lot of people who come in and vacation for the summer in those areas. And it would be devastating for their economy if we had to shut the province back down again for the entire summer. So they're willing to be a little bit more cautious, have perhaps an extra weekend when we don't open up just to make sure, so that they get June, July, and August as complete months for tourism to happen.
All right. My second question is, what has any residents or businesses voiced their concerns with regards to how this is going to play out?
Businesses or residents, we've had, on the marina side, we've had a lot of marinas who have reached out to us to find out when they're going to be able to open. They recognize that if we were to say that everyone can go to the boat launch, everyone can put their boats in the water as of the May long weekend, they're not in a position where they can get those boats out to everybody. What most of the marinas have said to us is that it's going to take them 3 to 4 weeks to clear the backlog on everything that they have. And if we were to only give a week's notice that things could open up, there's no way that they could get everything done in time. So they have been asking us, and that's why we opened up marinas earlier. Last week, they were able to do the prep work to get the boats ready for people in recognition of the amount of time it's going to take. I've also had a number of people who have seasonal cottages, seasonal trailers in this area who have reached out to my office. They're quite upset that they're not able to come up. They want to enjoy this area, and I don't blame them. I have an apartment in Toronto, and every time I have to spend time in Toronto, I appreciate where we live that much more. It is a beautiful area. We have so much to offer so many people, and people who want to come here definitely want to come here. And they're looking for ways that they can come up, they can support people in this area. We just have to do it in the safest possible way. We can't have an outbreak.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any hands up. It could just be a reflection of my connection. Typically, Taylor, you have questions, so I'm going to assume that you do.
Yes, I did actually have my hand up, but for some reason it doesn't appear to be working right now. Thanks, Dave. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions in regards to, the staged reopening. What are businesses expected to do to conduct their business safely when they are starting to reopen?
So we put out 60 documents. There are guidelines for different industries on how they can reopen safely. What our expectation is that businesses will go to the Ontario.ca website, get that information. It's actually COVID-19.ontario.ca. The link is right off of that. Take a look at what those guidelines are. Apply what is appropriate for your business. We're trying to do things in a way that allows for the business to open safely and responsibly. We want to make sure that customers are safe, and we want to make sure that the people who work in those locations are safe. Some simple things that you can employ: disinfect where it's appropriate, have some kind of a shield in place so that when you're going to the cashier, you're not your vapor water droplets are not coming in contact with the cashier. The cashier is not having those water droplets come in contact with the customers. It really is a lot of the things that we have been saying all along. Wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer or disinfectant where appropriate. For me to say you should disinfect everything all the time, different businesses have different protocols. Just as a quick example, grocery stores with the grocery carts, they're disinfecting the handles on the carts in between people using them. To say that, to make a blanket statement that all retail should disinfect the handles on carts, well, there's clothing stores that don't have shopping carts. There are other types of retail outlets that don't use that in part of their daily process. So it really comes down to each of the individual businesses need to go through the guidelines and take what applies to their specific store and do it.
This has been described as a staged reopening. So how long can we expect between, this stage where we are right now, where nurseries and hardware stores are starting to reopen, and kind of the next stage?
It really depends on how the virus reacts to this. Are people able to follow the social distancing rules? Are we doing things that are preventing the spread of the virus? And if that's the case, then we can open up sooner. If we find that there's an increase in the virus contracted by people, then we have to make adjustments. For me to say to you that we could do something different in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, it really comes back to the data. What is happening on the ground as we make these changes? We're seeing a reduction almost on a daily basis right now in the percentage of infections. Those are good signs. But we haven't had a full 2 weeks since we started opening things up. So we'll have to be monitoring that as we go to make the decision on what happens next. Katrina, you have a question? You're muted right now, Katrina.
Oh, is that better? Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay,
Yep.
You answered it a little bit there with Taylor's question, but just hoping you could give a bit of an explanation as to why it's nurseries and garden shops and hardware stores that are the first to open opposed to other businesses, and why these are the safest businesses to open first.
If you take a look at how we have been moving through this, we've started with curbside delivery with certain industries, certain businesses. As we have come through that and not seen an increase in the infection rates, we know then that those businesses, those companies have been able to put in place some of the safety measures. So it's appropriate then to open up that business for more people to come in, more types of contact. We started with that because hardware stores, for example, they provide a lot of things that you need to keep your home maintenance working. With respect to the garden centers, nurseries, and so on, there's less risk there because you're outside. There's not as much contact in a building. It's not contained in a building. So you can open things up. As the weather has changed, it's made it more prevalent. You can go to those types of places. Again, we started with curbside delivery with them. We gave them the opportunity to put in place the safety measures that they need for their staff and for their customers. Now we're able to open them up. On Monday, we're going to all of the other retail outlets. They'll start with curbside delivery. They'll have an opportunity then to implement the safety measures that they need to within their store. And as the data comes in and as we see what the effect is of opening up others, then we can make the decision, should we be opening these stores up completely so that people can come into the store as well. It staged that way so that you have data coming in from different businesses to determine whether or not there is a higher infection rate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? And I'm not seeing hands up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't put one up. If you do have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in with it.
Sorry, I do have another question, but I just want to make sure that everyone else has had a chance to ask their first one before I come back around.
Go ahead, Taylor.
All right. In some states south of the border that have reopened, I've been seeing a few stories that just because restaurants and other businesses are reopening doesn't mean that the customers are flocking back to what they used to be. What are we going to expect to see when retail and restaurants do start to reopen? What do you think the short-term and long-term effects of that are going to be?
We're going to be seeing an economic downturn for a long period of time because of this. In the short term, one of the things that we have to have is consumer confidence, that you feel safe going back out, that you feel that you're not going to get infected, that you're not going to be infecting someone else. And that is one of the biggest challenges that the entire economy is going to face, not just restaurants, We'll have that same thing with all retail outlets. We'll have it with concerts, with sporting events as we move forward. And I think it's going to be a case of how well does the staged rollout work right now? And the safer people see that they are as we're rolling things out, as we're opening up more businesses, the more comfortable people will feel going to those other businesses. I don't want to sugarcoat it at all. It is going to be a painful process for us to get the economy going again. There is no way around it. People have been doing a great job at social distancing. It's going to be difficult for them to accept they can go back and do life as it used to be. It will take a long time for people to feel safe again. And we have to, as businesses, as government, we have to make sure that we stage things appropriately so that it is very safe for people, that they feel confident again. And when the time comes that they can gather, they feel confident that they're able to gather safely.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other hands up, but again, I wasn't seeing them coming up earlier. If there is anyone else that has a question, please unmute yourself. I'm happy to answer it for you. All right, thank you very much.